all my 8,000 pounds hit that ship dead center. And the ship just, boom, went like that. Went down almost immediately. So, and it wasn't necessarily my fault. I mean, I wasn't, you know, you couldn't say, hey, you're a big hero, you did it. We were dropping bombs, but they didn't hit the target, and ours did.
Was it the tanker you got?
Yeah, hit the tanker dead center, and it just, he went down almost immediately. I didn't see it, but the crew did. And then, of course, we got down pretty heavy by fighters. And this, of course, I had to go with this foursome. You know, we were a four.
You didn't know where they were going.
Yeah, I didn't. Of course, I was hoping that he was latched onto his squadron, you know, where we'd get some protection. And but fortunately, very few fighters came for us. The rest of them were going after the big formations, which I was very happy to see.
I thought they usually picked the smallest numbers.
Well, normally they did, and they apparently didn't see us because the rest of the outfit was. We had, I don't know how many airplanes. We had 100 airplane 24s in the air at the time. And I think they thought the main body was, we better go after, I assume, because we went off by ourselves, and a few fighters jumped us, but they didn't knock anything out, and we came on home without any real problem. And but we lost some airplanes. Were knocked down out of the rest of the group.
How were the Japanese with their ACAC?
Well, the Army ACAC, not very good. The Navy ACAC, yes, they were pretty accurate. And we bombed a lot of, like WWII and a lot of the stations on the coastline that were Navy. And they were pretty sharp. And so we maneuvered to the point where we didn't get on our bomb run until the last minute. And but we had a lot of hits. But never, I had one on, one mission in WWII, and I was to fly. We had 4 squadrons and a group commander, and I was leading my squadron, 321st. And my job, about 50 miles before we came to the target, I was to take a 90-degree turn out over the water, came on back in, and he was to maneuver the rest of the group to a position where we would meet over the target. And the point being that I was to get one target, they were to get another target close by, but we would end up together and go home together, and for self-protection. Well, I went out, came back in, and when I looked back, he'd already dropped his bomb, and he was heading home with the rest of the group. And of course, the fighters spotted us by our lonesome, and they jumped us. And of course, I was mad as hell, and I was yelling at the fighters to come back. We had fighter cover then. And they either didn't hear me or didn't care to come back. And I lost my man on my right wing. One fighter came by me and got one burst into his wing, and the wing caught a fire forward.
Did anybody get out?
No. Excuse me. He was got fed. He, of course, went down, and they all went down. And they didn't find him until about 40 years later. He was in St. Louis. And some school kids there in New Guinea, 40 years later, were out fooling around in the jungle, and they found his wreckage. And, of course, it was his airplane, and they found, you know, his wings and class rings and dog bags and tags and whatnot, and it was. And they, of course, gathered the remains and brought him back and buried him in St. Louis. Buried him.
I think, from what I read, there's 700 or 800 more planes they got to find over there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them like that.
Well, like I say, one time we lost an airplane. We took off, and that was very tragic. They were new airplane, new crew. And I was a squadron operations officer. And we took off, it was being a night mission. And we were in what was called Nadzab, which was in the valley. And at night, we would take off, fly something like 2 minutes and 37 seconds, and then we would make something like a 35-degree turn to the right and keep going, and we would go through the pass, make it out. And we briefed them and debriefed them. not debriefed them, but briefed them, and I went out the airplane when they taxied out and were sitting at the end of the runway, and I went out and climbed up in the airplane, and I said, for God's sakes, remember, 2 minutes, and he went the wrong way. He went out, made a 35, and we didn't know it, and I was driving back and I saw that big flash up in the hills, and I knew exactly where it was. I knew he just made the wrong turn and ran in the hills. But we decided to try and find it, so we got a bunch of natives, about 12 natives, and there was about, I don't know, there were about 6 or 7 of us, and we wanted to go out and find the airplane if we could. And we spent most of the day, and that was interesting. These natives, we'd go through a native village, and there were no women. They'd send their women. They knew we were coming. They'd send their women. And we had a small airplane, a little single-engine airplane. Of course, we couldn't see. We slashed our way through the jungles. These natives knew how to do it. And they would drop flares when we get to the village. Let us know where they were, that they were up there, and then they'd tell us which way to go. And they'd drop those flares and they'd burst. And the natives loved pieces of cloth, colored cloth, just loved it. And boy, the minute they burst, they all scrambled into the woods, and they'd hunt around, look around trees and look around, and then they'd see everything was okay. Boy, they'd come out there and they'd snatch those little old pieces of cloth, wear it on their heads. That was really something. They thought that was great. Anyway, we continued on and saw the airplane from one hill to the other, and it was getting late in the afternoon. So at least we knew where it was then, and so we decided to head on back. And as we were going along a little path, I was up front, and one of the natives were up there, and he stopped us. And I said, what's wrong? And he pointed up there, and there were 3 pigs, wild pigs. And of course, over there, they weren't allowed to have guns. And they never ate much meat because they couldn't get them with spears in the jungle. So he turned around to me, and I had a carbine. And I said, here. And so he went up and he pulled the trigger and did fire. And he hadn't cocked it. And so as he looked back at me, and I went like this, and so he cocked it. Down, pulled it back. That time I was coming up to pull it and didn't fire. Well, I was up there pretty close, and pigs went into the jungle about 10. And he rushed up and he pulled me up and he said, there they are. And I had a 45 then. I took that 45, I just unloaded it. I just kept firing, and you heard that pig squeal, The minute that pig squealed, those natives into that jungle, boy, and they had him and cut his throat, put him on a pole, and they came out hunting down the village, down the way. And of course they're calling, you good man, you stay in the village tonight, and I, no. And the guy said, we fix you up with woman, you stay in the village. I said, well, if you see one of those women, you never want to. Yeah. Anyway, that was kind of an experience I had with them, and
Did you get a nickname for that?
Pardon?
Did you get a nickname for that?
No, I don't think so. But
big killers. Huh?
Yeah. So that was an experience I had when I was on the ground, and